maybe that's a good place to go to the this idea of dissociation, right? So you were saying out there is transpersonal thoughts, which might sound, if you start from our perspective and then say that, that might sound quite like a leap. But if you come from the view of there's only, in the first instance, there's only cosmic consciousness or mind at large, and then this dissociation happens. Is that how it,
yeah.
or maybe, yeah.
I will use a time metaphor. I don't necessarily mean this literally, because the status of time in physics is very questionable these days. So I don't want to get pinned down on that. So it's a metaphor. Let's imagine that in the beginning, there was only one spatially unbound consciousness, universal consciousness. There are many names. Some New Age people prefer cosmic consciousness. I don't have any problem with that name. Cosmic refers to the cosmos, and that, yeah, that's what I mean. So I'm fine with that, although that name has gained a bad rap for some reason. I will use universal consciousness here. So that's how it starts. So there are no two perspectives within that one universal consciousness. You can imagine it as your own mind if you are within an ideal sensory deprivation chamber. So you have no perception. You don't hear anything, you don't see anything, you don't feel anything, touch your skin, nothing. All you have are your endogenous mental states. Now, extrapolate that many orders of magnitude, and then you have the original state of universal consciousness, having endogenous experiential states. There are no two perspectives there, as you don't have two perspectives in that ideal sensory deprivation chamber. You experience your thoughts and your emotions from a first person perspective. There is no second or third person. Now, I think what happened, again, within the time metaphor, is that at some point, universal consciousness underwent dissociation. Now, this is not an appeal to abstraction. We know dissociation happens. We've known it at least since the late 19th century, although there were skeptics of strong dissociative states. People were skeptical, some people were skeptical of them until the second decade of the 21st century. Until very recently, people were saying, well, these people with dissociative identity disorder, they are attention seekers, they are pretending, it doesn't really exist. Your mind cannot seemingly break up into different personalities that don't like each other or don't have mental access to one another. It's impossible. Well, thanks to neuroimaging over the last 10 years or so, we know that, hey, it does happen, okay? There have been neuroimaging studies in which people with dissociative identity disorder were scanned, and actors pretending to have dissociative identity disorder, pretending to themselves, and that's actor training. You have to adopt that perspective in your inner life as well, not only behave accordingly. So actors were playing that game and they were scanned, and guess what? Dissociative identity disorder, the real thing, looks very different under a brain scanner. There was a phenomenal study in 2015 in Germany. A woman with DID had an alter that claimed to be blind. And so they hooked her up to MEG, I think, or an EEG. I don't remember exactly. And her host personality was in control. There was normal activity in her visual cortex. But when the supposedly blind alter was in control, activity in the visual cortex just disappeared, even though her eyes were wide open. Now, you cannot fake that, right? Dissociative has a literally blinding power. It is literally blinding. So, okay, we know dissociation happens, and it can create the appearance of multiple co-conscious centers of consciousness that are disjoint from one another. We know this happens. I'm just extrapolating and saying, well, this happened to universal consciousness. Oh, why did it happen? Why would consciousness do that? Remember, I'm a naturalist. It happened because this is what happens in nature. Nature is such that this shit happens. Too bad. I don't think it was premeditated. I don't think it was planned. It just happened. And the moment that happened in science, we call the moment of abiogenesis, the creation of life from non-life. I think living beings, metabolizing organisms, are the extrinsic appearance of dissociated mental states, the extrinsic appearance of an alter. That would be the psychiatric term. When you are a dissociated personality of a host, they call you an alter personality, an alter consciousness, whatever, alternative. I think we are all alters of universal consciousness. The fact that we are alive is the image of that dissociation. When we die, dissociation ends, we are reabsorbed into this ground level of reality. And metabolism is just what dissociation looks like from across its dissociative boundary. As a matter of fact, matter is what experiential states look like from across a dissociative boundary. Because when I look at the inanimate universe, I'm looking at it from across my own dissociative boundary. I am an alter. I have a dissociative boundary. That boundary looks in perception like skin, eyes, ear, nose, and tongue. That's the appearance of my dissociative boundary on the screen of perception. So I'm looking across my dissociative boundary into the transpersonal experiential states of the inanimate universe. And what do I see? I see matter. Now, it's not a coincidence, because when my inner life presents itself to a neuroscientist operating a brain scanner, that presentation also happens in the form of matter. Or to a neurosurgeon operating my brain, my inner life presents itself from across its own dissociative boundary as matter. So I would go as far and say, this is what matter is. It's what experiential states look like from across the dissociative boundary. And life is the image of a dissociative process in universal consciousness.